Hi, welcome to Big Daddy Bakes. I'm Big Daddy, and today we're going to be making some Italian bread. You've probably bought that stuff in the grocery store they call Italian bread, and it may look like bread, but it really is kind of tasteless and not very good. Well, this will change your mind on how Italian bread should taste. It has a long fermentation period for making the biga the night before all the way through its risings, but it's worth the effort. So let's get to it and I'll show you how to do it. For this recipe you'll need, first we're going to make our starter, which I have in this bowl. It's called a biga or a starter or a pre-ferment, whatever you want to call it. And it's 3/4 cup of flour, half a cup of warm water, and 1/8 teaspoon of yeast. And I'll show you how to make this and what we're going to do with that in just a moment. Now for the dough, we're going to need 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. We're going to need 3/4 cup of warm water.
So it was at this exact moment when the camera quit recording. So our ingredients are 2 teaspoons of instant yeast, 3/4 cup of warm water, 2 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, and 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt. You're also going to need 1 large egg and sesame seeds. To make the starter, you need 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, half a cup of warm water, and 1/8 teaspoon of instant yeast. Stir this all together and cover with cling film and let rest at room temperature overnight up to 18 hours.
Alright, to make this recipe, I've made this recipe several times in testing, and I made a mistake when I filmed it before. So this time I'm going to correct my mistake and show you exactly what I did so you don't have the problem. So it all has to do with the flour. I weighed out my flour, and before it's always worked, but we were in quite a dry time where I live here in Vermont, so I think the flour was just a little bit less than it needed. So we'll continue on with this one, and I'll show you where I think I made the mistake, and we'll correct it. So I have my yeast and my warm water in, and this is my starter, my biga, which has been sitting out on the counter overnight. I'm going to put that in. Then I'm going to go ahead and add my flour. And I'm going to mix this for just a little bit. Let it kind of get going. I just don't want to put my salt right in with the yeast. I want to give it a little bit of a chance. Alright. And then I'm going to add my salt to this. And I'm going to knead this for a few minutes. And we're going to look to see if the water content actually makes a dough that's soft but not sticky. In the case before, it made a soft dough, but it was too soft. It needed a little bit more structure. So I'm going to let this knead for a couple minutes, and then I'll come back in. Okay, this is nowhere needed, but I can see that I don't have to add any extra flour, I don't think. I'm going to let it go for a minute or two more, and we'll see. Let it get some of this. It's still very, very sticky, and I think that that's going to be a problem. So let me rewind that and say, yes, I think we need to add a little bit more flour. I'm going to add maybe 2 tablespoons of flour. And I'm going to let this go, and I'll see if it's going to stand up to what it needs to. Alright, so I think it's still a tiny bit sticky. So I'm going to add a couple tablespoons more of flour. And I think this will probably be about as much as I want to add. Okay, so our dough is a little bit sticky, but it's definitely well kneaded. I'm going to take it out. When I did it wrong before, it wouldn't even, you couldn't even do this. It was like liquid coming out. So I've got my bowl here. It's got some spray oil in it. I'm just going to do this, cover it with some cling film, and let it sit for about 90 minutes, anywhere between 60 and 90 minutes till it's double in volume. Alright, so the dough rested for 60 minutes, rose nearly to the top. I flipped it over, punched it down, and now it looks like this. So I'm going to take it out. And now we're going to shape it into what we want. Now, this is what you want. You don't want it so sticky you can't do anything with it. So I'm going to cut it into 3 parts. I think I just a little bit on that one. And what I'm going to do is roll them into long So that's one. I'm going to put it on the edge here. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Just going to roll them out. Now, if it gets to where it's springing back and it won't unroll, let it rest for about 10 minutes. It will be better behaved. Alright, so I'm just going to do a simple braid. Center, 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 center. I'm going to pluck it together, push that under, together, push that under. I'm going to put this on a sheet pan, and I'm going to let it rise for about 45 minutes to an hour. Once it has risen, we'll prepare it for the oven. Alright, so this has puffed up. It's really big and pretty. So what I have here is 1 egg and about a tablespoon of water. I've beat it together, and then I'm just going to lightly, not going to press down on it real hard and do out any of the air that we just spent all that time building up, but I'm just going to brush it on all of it. Very gently. This is going to give it a nice shine. It's going to be very pretty. And it also is the glue that's going to glue our sesame seeds on the top. Alright, so I think I've got that done. And I'm going to take my sesame seeds and stick them on. If you don't like sesame seeds, you can leave this off, but an Italian loaf has sesame seeds on it generally. Alright, there we go. Now, I'm going to bake this at 425 for about, 20 to 25 minutes. So here's our bread after it came out of the oven. It has a beautiful crust. The sesame seeds are stuck down because of the egg wash. It's nice and brown and hollow. This is delicious, sliced and served with spaghetti, whatever you want Italian. Slice it into wedges and make garlic bread out of it. It's just phenomenal as garlic bread. Thank you for being with us here on Big Daddy Bakes today. Part of the reason I did the video this way is to show you that even though you have everything perfect, sometimes it just doesn't work. And you just have to learn how the dough feels, if it's too sticky or it's just not going to hold together. My braid in this particular one was perfect. It looks exactly like I wanted it to look. But, you know, there are failures. And if you make a failure, it's still going to taste good. It may not be pretty, but you slice that up and make garlic bread out of it and nobody's going to know anyway. So thank you so much for joining me here on Big Daddy Bakes. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing. Also give it a like if you can. And also give me any comments. I'm really happy to hear from people that watch the channel. Thank you so much. Seeds, and I don't know what else I'm supposed to say. Jesus Christ.